Greetings to you who are watching the Philosophy of Life channel. Dear friends, enjoying a peaceful and carefree old age, without worrying about finances, is the wish of everyone as they reach the twilight of life. Yet, because of foolish, short-sighted personal mistakes, some people push themselves into tragedy. They reach old age with no money, no savings, even carrying huge debts on their shoulders. Their health is weak, they can no longer work. They fall into a vicious circle of dependence, loneliness, and sorrow. Let's listen to the following stories together. The first story. At the end of life, burdened with billions in debt due to borrowing money through apps. For nearly a month, Ms. Heen's family in Hanoi has been living in hell when people from loan apps constantly harass them to collect debts. Even in her dreams, she never thought her own father would unintentionally push the whole family into such a situation. Her mother passed away early, and her father raised his children alone. When they all grew up, married, and established their own families, he lived alone in a small house in the countryside. Earlier this year, because the house had become dilapidated, her father, Mr. Hung, wanted to repair it. Knowing his children were also struggling financially due to the pandemic, he didn't want to bother them, so he used the small amount of savings he had set aside to fix the house. But once the repairs started, that little fund was not enough. By chance, he received a call from someone who said they would send him a link to borrow money with an extremely quick process. Money disbursed in 5 minutes. No need to provide relatives' information. The documents were as simple as sending both sides of his ID card. Seeing it was fast and convenient, and feeling really pressed for money, plus thinking he only needed to borrow less than 10 million dong and could repay it within 2 or 3 months by tightening his spending, Mr. Hung downloaded the app and registered. Just like that, he borrowed money on 2 apps, each for 5 million dong. However, a week later, he realized the lenders were vague and dishonest about interest rates when they called and demanded that for each 5 million borrowed, he now had to pay back 9 million. At that time, he had no money to repay, so he started getting threatening calls. They said if he didn't repay on time, they would come to his house to slash and kill him, and spread slander about him on social media. Terrified and not knowing what to do, he was kindly advised by them to borrow from other apps to pay off the old ones. Things kept going like that. To pay off old debts, he had to take out new ones, falling into a never-ending cycle of rolling loans from app to app. He would borrow from one app to pay another, then borrow from several apps to pay a single one, until after just more than a month, the lenders claimed his total borrowed amount had climbed to over $500 million dong. For the past month, he has been living days worse than death, with daily calls demanding payment. They even edited and spread photos of him and his grandchildren online, accompanied by malicious rumors. But by now, he was too scared to continue borrowing from one app to pay another. The deeper he sank, the more the debts piled up, with no end in sight. He wanted to hide this from his children and grandchildren, but he couldn't, because somehow the lenders had accessed his daughter Heen's contact information. When she received a phone call telling her how much her father owed, she could not believe her ears. For the past month, these people have been calling her non-stop, terrorizing and threatening her in every possible way to demand money. She can't focus on her work or her family life. Desperate because the debt is too large, running everywhere but still unable to raise enough to repay, and with his children also struggling financially. In the end, the only thing Mr. Hung could do was sell his house in the countryside to get money to pay off the debt. Now that the house he had lived in for decades has been transferred to a new owner, he can't help but feel bitter. He had thought his old age would be relaxed and peaceful, but due to his own lack of understanding, he turned himself into a penniless man. Thinking about the days ahead, when he must move to the city to live with his children, even if they love and care for him, it can never compare to being in his own home. Thinking that way brings tears to his eyes. Dear friends, a common mindset among many parents in old age is that they don't want to be a burden to their children. Especially when the children are not yet well off. They don't want to rely on their children financially. Even when they're in difficulty, they try to solve things on their own. Like in the case of Mr. Hung above. Just because he was short of less than 10 million dong to repair his home and didn't want to trouble his children, he turned to online loan apps and ended up carrying a massive debt in his twilight years. There's a saying, in youth, you lean on your parents; in old age, you lean on your children. But this doesn't mean that, in old age, parents should become a heavy burden to their children. Leaning on children in old age should be understood mainly as spiritual support. When you are old, you should confide in your children when you face difficulties. If you need help, you should openly discuss it with them. Because when the old tree falls, the young shoots rise. There will be times in old age when we are no longer clear-headed enough to make wise decisions. Asking for your children's opinions is also a way to help parents make more accurate decisions, especially in important matters related to property, health, and even their own lives. People in Vietnam, like parents everywhere in the world, always love and care for their children wholeheartedly when they are young. But there is one difference. Even when their children are grown, many Vietnamese parents still worry endlessly and are willing to sacrifice everything for them. When the children are still in school, no matter how hard they must work, even if they have to catch crabs and snails or even beg, parents still try to provide for their education. As the children grow up, parents still cling to the belief that water flows downhill, everything continues to be poured into the children. In the past, when life was very difficult, parents tried and barely managed to feed their children, with nothing left over for themselves. But now, even though the economy is better, many parents keep living this way, hoping that when their children become successful, they will never forget their parents' sacrifices. Mrs. Lan in Phu Xuyen, Hanoi, is nearly 70 years old. A few years ago, when a national highway was built through her commune, land prices suddenly soared. Seeing that her children were still working hard, going back and forth to make ends meet, she felt uneasy. She decided to sell the land and divide it among her children, giving each one a portion. As for her own portion, she sold it and gave the money to her eldest son so he could start a business. She told herself, "I won't live much longer anyway. My children are at the age where they must be working hard to support their families. So they're the ones who need capital. One way or another, I'll give it all to them in the end. So I might as well give it early so they can plan their lives." She moved in with her eldest son because she assumed that in her old age she would live with him anyway. Surely, if I give him everything, he won't turn his back on me, right? If I can't trust my own son, who can I trust? She said, fully confident in her decision. But after she gave her son all her house and land as capital and moved in with him, her other children seemed to forget their responsibility toward their mother. They only visited occasionally for formality's sake, not really asking how she was doing, whether she was sick, or how her daily life was. That wasn't all. In February last year, her eldest son needed more money to open another restaurant, so he mortgaged the house's land title to the bank. At first, the restaurant was crowded and money came in easily. But then the pandemic dragged on, and the restaurant was almost always closed while he still had to pay nearly 10 million a month in rent. The bank debt kept accumulating interest, and there was no way to repay it. The bank began pressuring them to seize the house. Mrs. Lan was on the verge of being thrown out onto the street, while her other children simply commented, "Well, you invested everything in the eldest. Now you lose it, so you must accept it." Thinking of this, her heart ached. As a farmer, she has no pension, so her future will be extremely difficult. If she had kept some of her own property and not become completely dependent on her children, things would not have turned out this way. Many parents spend their whole lives building and saving for their children. And at the end, whatever little they have left, they also want to divide among them. A lifetime for their children. Yet many of them end up in hardship in old age because of a lack of wisdom when distributing their assets. For dutiful children in loving, united families, the parents' inheritance is simply a spiritual legacy. But in many families, inheritance becomes a source of conflict, lawsuits, and even violence between siblings, causing their parents anguish. Some parents end up completely destitute, with no money, no housing, and no idea where to go in their twilight years. People say even a fierce tiger does not eat its cubs. But in real life there are bitter stories of parents treating their own children cruelly. And then, in old age, they must face loneliness, with no one to care for them. Even if their children look after them, it is only out of obligation, nothing more, because the pain the parents inflicted has haunted their children for a lifetime. Let's listen to the following confession. I am 32 years old. I finished my master's degree and now live abroad. I have no worries about my career or my life. But deep inside, I still carry sadness about my family. When I was small, I lived in an unhappy home. My father was a drunk. Whenever he set foot in the house, he would shout and beat my mother and his children, whether he was drunk or sober. Living with such a terrible man, my mother sometimes wanted to leave and go far away. But for our sake, she silently endured his beatings and insults. There were countless times when she was beaten black and blue, and several times she had to be rushed to the hospital. I still remember that when we were little, we siblings told each other that if we obeyed our parents and studied really well, maybe Dad would change and stop hitting our mother and us. But no matter how obedient and accomplished we were, he never stopped his violence. When I went to university, I was fortunate to study far from home, so I began to experience a different life. Honestly, I felt that school was peaceful, everything there was calm. Each return home for a visit meant witnessing yet another scene of quarrels and beatings. There were times when I didn't want to step back into that house at all. Even during summer, I stayed at school, volunteering in labs or finding part-time jobs to make money. After graduation, my career did not go smoothly at first, so I had to work as a waitress in a cafe. I still remember, during that time, I received news that my mother had been hospitalized after another severe beating from my father. We thought she might not survive. Thanks to pressure from relatives, my mother finally decided to move to live with me and work as a housekeeper. Only when left alone at home without a woman's presence did my father begin to feel the emptiness. He then sincerely apologized and begged my mother to return, out of compassion and a desire for her children to have both parents. She came back to him. With determination, I applied for and received a scholarship to study abroad. I remember talking to my father about it. He only imagined that I would earn a lot of money and send it home. So he was overjoyed. He had no idea how hard life is for international students who must struggle in a foreign land. Many times he called only to ask if I had money to send so he could build this, buy that, but mostly so he could drink. Each time, I felt deeply hurt. While living abroad, I met someone who always protected and cared for me, and I fell in love with him. He was my classmate. His family is very well educated. Both his parents are teachers, so they are principled and proper. When we both returned to Vietnam for a visit, his family came to my house and we planned the wedding. I thought that, with a future son-in-law, my father would change, become kind and loving toward us, so as not to embarrass himself before the in-laws. But after we returned to the other country to work, I heard once again that my father had gotten drunk and beaten my mother so badly that she ended up in the hospital. I felt incredibly ashamed toward my fiancé and his family for having such a father. And I no longer wanted the groom's family to come for the engagement ceremony. I called my parents and told them this. Hearing this, My father called me to apologize and begged me to forgive him, promising he would change. My mother also begged me to let it go, so that my marriage could proceed smoothly, saying we'd pretend nothing had happened. In the end, the engagement still took place, and both families agreed we would return at the end of the year to hold the wedding. I also hoped that things would go well until then. But recently, once again, my father got drunk and beat my mother. She was so afraid she ran away to her parents' home. It may sound unfilial, but honestly, at this point, I only feel I must fulfill my duty toward him as a daughter. I no longer have any emotional bond. For decades, my mother and we children have never had a single peaceful day with him. Only endless days of pain and humiliation and tears. Dear friends, a man who treats his wife and children cruelly when he is young may well be abandoned in his old age. In marriage, if a woman never feels her husband's love and care in her younger years, it is very hard for her to truly care about him in his later years. Many women remain with such husbands only out of obligation, not affection. They no longer really care about them, because no one wants to nurse a man who has abused, cursed, and disrespected her. Similarly, when parents treat their children badly, the consequences are the same, no matter how dutiful the children. Even if they provide for their parents materially, it may be only for the sake of obligation, not out of love. That is the real tragedy, the bitter fruit that parents must bear at the end of life for the seeds they sowed in the past. Dear friends, every tree has its own flowers, every home its own story. It is hard to find a single formula that can guarantee both material comfort and emotional peace for elderly parents. But from the stories we've just heard, each of us can reflect and draw lessons for ourselves, so that we may have a peaceful, happy old age with our children and grandchildren. Dear friends, the desire to be happy is the deepest yearning in each human life. Every action, big or small, every hope and dream, ultimately aims toward happiness. But what makes us truly happy when we are old? The ancients said, know how to manage your money and you won't be poor. Have a plan and you won't be in chaos. Be prepared and you won't be anxious. If you want happiness in old age, you must start by being kind to yourself through these 6 essential things. Let's listen together.